Different type of video from me today. This is a different medium. It's what the wife has got into, and I thought I'd have a little bit of a play with it just while my big project is having its, paint dry and things like that. What kind of things does she do? Well, she makes resin art. Here's some stuff that she's done. Sort of pendants, jewellery, that kind of thing. It has been a bit of a learning curve for her, just working out what the different glitters and the different types of resin can do. And obviously there's a bit of an error on that one where, it's sort of shrunk in the mould and pulled away from the wall. But she has certainly got better at it. That was the second attempt. Lovely little sheen going through that. But one thing that I noticed was that in some cases there's almost like a direct comparison between the kind of crafting that I do and the sort of stuff that she does. Just in terms of, different inks and things like that to get, well, kind of a bone white. I'm really pleased with that one. That was one that I did. So yeah, plus of course, if there's any spare resin left over, then it can be used for, scatter terrain that I can use in my games. Now, while I was having a play one day, we had seen a technique that actually uses craft hobby paint, one of the effects paints, and they use it to create that sort of striation or crystalline effect in sort of these, I guess, resin gemstones. And I gave it a shot. I wasn't 100% happy with the result, even though the wife reckons they look fine. But that is what I am going to attempt to do. I'm going to go for the Mark II version and see if I can get that technique down pat. Now, I'm going to be using UV resin for this. This is unbranded stuff. I think it just came from Temu. And even though it does introduce some bubbles, you are supposed to give it a bit of a mix through beforehand. And because I'm only going to do 2 small gemstones, I'm not going to mix a huge amount of the stuff. Yeah, I reckon that will just about do. Oh, and one thing I should mention, you don't often see me wear gloves, but they are very much a necessity when you're dealing with resin, because it's, yeah, horrible stuff to get on your fingers. Okay, I am going to add a little bit of colour. Now, like those earlier ones, I want them to have sort of like a translucent feel to it. And this is what they call pigment powder or mica powder. And I just want a really small amount. I don't want to sort of completely saturate it, because I just want a sort of shimmer in there. And when you're using UV resin, apparently if you get sort of too much pigment, one, it can stop the resin from curing to start off with, which is never good. But two, if you make it too dark, it also won't cure. All right. So yeah, that's got a little bit of a shimmer to it. And I'm just going to pinch the top. And I'm not filling these up all the way, because this is going to be a sort of layered piece. Okay, right, now what you need to do is allow it to settle, and you can see that there are some bubbles coming up to the surface. And when the bubbles come up to the surface, you get one of these, a long necked lighter, and you just use it to pop the bubbles. Only don't hold the flame on too much, otherwise it's going to destroy your resin molds. All right, I'll let that sit for a little while the bubbles come to the surface, pop them again, and then we will cure this and move on to the next stage. Right, that's got rid of all of the bubbles that I can see. And now I'm going to bring across this UV lamp. Okay, so I've set that for a 3-minute cure because I do want this to be really solid for when I'm working on it. All right, that should be nicely cured. And now I am going to move on to this. This is Villaggio Game Colour, and it is the special effect, and it's the frost one. And you can see from, you know, just where there's a bit of excess around the rim there, where it dries, it sort of, you know, comes up into this sort of like frosty stuff. So I've given it a good shake. Now, when Daniel Cooper, he's the crafter that gave us the idea for this, when he does it, he puts big splots on, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. Well, I guess depending on the effect that you're after, it may well be. But what I am going to do is apply it to a brush. And what I'm going to do is I am going to put some diagonal stripes on it. And I'm not going all the way to the edge. Now, it's fine if you don't make a perfect line, because nature tends not to have sort of perfect lines, and that is what we're trying to emulate. Plus, having some little sort of splots on it and a crinkly edge is what makes this stuff actually activate. All right, in fact, you can see just where I'm breathing, that top one, that first one that I did, is already starting to go and do its magic stuff. All right, now cheat time for us. We want this as dry as possible, so I am going to use the hairdryer. And I'm just putting it on a low setting, and I can see them all starting to cure off. And you can see that lovely frost effect that we've got there. All right, let's get our resin back. Now, this next part is a little bit counterintuitive. I've got two colours of green here. I've got a light green and a darker green. And I am going to use the darker green first. And essentially what I'm going to do is use this dark green, and this is an alcohol ink, and I am just going to use it to tint this colour and start bringing a little bit more green in. Now, what I have got, and this is just to get a really small amount of ink, I don't want a whole dollop. I've just got a cocktail stick, and what I've done is I've cut a sort of cross cut in the end of it, just so that it can sort of act like a quill and draw some of that ink up. Because I don't want a whole drop, I just want a small amount. Okay, because it's only a small amount of resin I've got in here, obviously. Mix through, and then we go for another thin coat on top of these. Just make sure it pushes all the way out to the edge of the mould. And obviously try not to disturb that frost effect. Come on, get round. And then back out with the UV lamp. Actually, I wanted it 3 minutes, didn't I? There we are. All right, that's cured off. And now we want the backing colour. Now, because I want it nice and light and translucent, it's why I'm using the colours in sort of like a back to front method, because I only wanted a small amount of tint on that. That's why I used a dark green. But now I want a proper green at the back, and that's why I'm using a whole drop of ink in here. And just get that mixed through, and I'll give that a chance to settle and get rid of any bubbles while I do the next part, because we are back to the game colour. Now this time I'm going to put 3 stripes on it. I'm not doing them in the same direction. I'm going to do them in the other diagonal, but I'm going to try not to make it sort of like at right angles, because again, in nature, you don't get that many right angles. So again, drop it onto the paintbrush like so. Whoops. Wipe that spill off. And then hairdryer time again. Now that that's dried, let's get this backing colour on. And this is the point where we're going to fill the mould right up to the top. And again, any bubbles that have come to the surface, get rid of them with that long neck lighter. Apparently you can use a heat gun. We haven't had too much success with that, and you certainly should not be using a blowtorch. Now it's time for the final cure. All right, it's all cured, nice and hard. And this is always the nerve-wracking bit, because since you've been working from the front to the back, you never actually get to see what the front of it looks like and how it's all come together until you actually demold it. And it could be a complete and utter disaster. I guess this is kind of the same stage that in our modeling we would get to, you know, when we sort of like put that initial undercoat on a model that ties all the pieces together. But it is time to see what these are like. Come on, pop out. Okay, and it has cured on both sides. I'm not sure. I think maybe I should have had the initial colour a little bit darker. See what the other one looks like. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see what the wife thinks of them. Maybe that's just the wrong colour scheme. Oh well. Anyway, that is about it for this one. I will leave a link to Daniel Cooper's web channel down below in the description. Obviously, you guys, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff or the usual figure painting, modelling, all that kind of jazz, please do hit the like and subscribe button. It all helps. And otherwise, we'll catch you guys later. All right, I was going to finish the video there, but that just annoyed me. I know I was so close, and it was just colour choices that hexed me, and quite possibly just the orientation of those lines. So I have done another pair. Changes I have done. First of all, for that middle layer, well, for starters, I've chosen a darker mica powder, and I've gone away from the lime green, and I've simply used the full green ink. Instead of a dab, I used a full drop of ink for the middle layer, and then added an extra 2 drops for the back layer, because I did definitely want that back darker. In an awful lot of cases, resin makers will put sort of like an opaque backing colour on, either a black or a white. But because I did want it translucent and able to shine through, I just went for a darker, still translucent backing. But, oh yeah, and that was the other thing. Instead of having the crosses, or the striation pattern with the frosting going like that, I've made it more sort of like that, as if it was sort of like just slightly off center. Okay, so the diagonals are both going in this direction, but they're just off by a couple of degrees. Okay, let's see what they look like. Come on. Yes, that is far more what I was after. Okay. Yeah, I think that's cracked it. Let's have a look at the other one. Yes, I am definitely happy with that. All right. Hang on, let's get one of those. And just compare them. I do like the blue, but I am very, very happy with that darker green. All right. Do the like, subscribe. Please, in the comments down below, tell me which of those you prefer. Even if it's just down to the colour scheme, because I do like the blue. I wouldn't mind doing another set in the blue, but using this method, now that I know exactly what I'm doing with it. Thank you very much. We'll catch you next time.